Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video we had discussed about chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the Indian Evidence Act of 1872. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. In today's video we will start chapter 5 that deals with documentary evidence. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand it. So if you're new here, please like and subscribe to my channel to get the video notifications. So let's get started. So in this video, we are going to cover chapter 5 that talks about documentary evidence. It starts with section 61, which says proof of contents of documents. So the contents of documents may be proved either by primary or by secondary evidence. So whenever there is a document that is placed before a court, the contents of such document may be either proved by primary evidence or by secondary evidence. Now what is a primary and what is a secondary evidence? We will understand this when we read section 62 and section 63. Section 62 talks about primary evidence. It says primary evidence means the documents itself produced for the inspection of the court. So whenever there is a document that needs to get proved before a court in a particular trial or proceedings, then if such document is itself produced before the court for its inspection, then that will be considered as a primary evidence. So primary evidence is basically the document itself. Explanation 1 says where the document is executed in several parts, each part is primary evidence of the document. So all those parts, they are all primary evidences of the entire document. Where a document is executed in counterpart, each counterpart being executed by one or some of the parties only, each counterpart is primary evidence as against the parties executing it. So whenever the document is divided into parts and each of those parts are counterparts and they are executed by various persons. So there is not only a single person involved, there are various persons involved who are executing different counterparts of the same document. So each counterpart will be considered as a primary evidence as against the parties who are executing it. So the counterpart that was executed by A will be a primary evidence against A, and the counterpart that is executed by B, that will be considered as a primary evidence against B. So this is how it will be considered. Explanation 2 says where the number of documents are all made by one uniform process. So whenever the number of documents are made by one singular uniform process, as in the case of a printing or a lithography or photography, etc., each is primary evidence of the contents of the rest. So in that case, all the parts will be considered as primary evidences for the rest of the parts. But where they are all of copies of a common original, they are not primary evidences of the contents of the original. So we must understand that copies do not form primary evidence. Copies are not considered as primary evidences. Now section 63 talks about secondary evidence. So it means and includes firstly the certified copies given under the provisions hereinafter contained. So whenever a certified copy is given under the provisions that are contained hereinafter, those certified copies will be considered as secondary evidence of those primary evidence. Secondly, copies made from the original by mechanical processes which in themselves ensure the accuracy of the copy and copies compared with such copies. So whenever there is a duplicate or copies made from the original through mechanical processes, and then it is verified and checked that whether it is accurate to such original or not. So if the copies are verified and they are compared with the original and it is ensured that such copies are exact same photocopies of the original, they do not differ from the original, then that will also be considered as secondary evidences. Now thirdly, copies made from or compared with the original. Fourthly, counterparts of documents as against the parties who did not execute them. So whenever the parties have not executed any counterpart of a document, but such document in its entirety have various counterparts, and that counterpart which was not executed by a person but forms part of the entire document will be considered as secondary evidence in respect of that person only. Fifthly, oral accounts of the contents of a document given by some person who has himself seen it. So if the person has himself seen the document and he is giving oral accounts of the contents of such document, then that will also be considered as secondary evidence. So let's quickly sum up the distinction between primary evidence and secondary evidence. Primary evidence is original document which is presented to the court for its inspection, while secondary evidence is the document which is not original but one of those which are mentioned in section 68. Primary evidence is the best evidence in all circumstances. It is considered that it is the best evidence that the court can get, and secondary evidence is not the best evidence but is evidence of secondary nature and is admitted in exceptional circumstances only that are mentioned in section 63. Giving primary evidence is the general rule. So whenever you need to give evidence in support of a trial or proceedings, you need to give the primary evidence, but giving secondary evidence is exception to the general rule. No notice is required before giving primary evidence. So in a case or a trial or a proceedings, if you are giving any primary evidence, then a notice is not required to give in support of that primary evidence, but notice is required to be given before giving secondary evidences. The value of primary evidence is highest, while the value of secondary evidence is not as that of primary evidence. So that is the main reason why it is called the primary evidence and that is called the secondary evidence. So primary evidences will always have the highest value. Now section 64 talks about proof of documents by primary evidence. So documents must be proved by primary evidence except in cases hereinafter mentioned. So the general and basic rule is that if you need to prove a document, you need to give the primary evidence to prove it. But however, section 65 says that cases in which secondary evidence relating to document may be given. So where we can give secondary evidence is covered under section 65. These are the particular conditions to give secondary evidence. So it says secondary evidence may be given of the existence, condition or contents of a document in the following cases, where when the original is shown or appears to be in the possession or power of the person against whom the document is sought to be proved. Say for example, there is a plaintiff and there is a defendant. Both are parties to the same suit. Now the plaintiff, in order to prove his case, needs to give primary evidence. That means the plaintiff wants to prove before the court that the plaintiff actually owns a particular piece of land. Now he has to prove it before the court by giving primary evidence. That means he needs to submit the original deed of that particular piece of land, that yes, I own it because I have this deed. But in this case, somehow the deed is in the actual possession of the defendant, and the plaintiff cannot possibly prove before the court by giving the primary evidence, which is the original deed that is in the possession of the defendant. The plaintiff has no chance to obtain it. So that is what clause A says. It says when the original is shown or appears to be in the possession or power of the person against whom the document is sought to be proved. So the plaintiff needs to prove it against the defendant, and the primary evidence is actually in the possession of the defendant. So in that case, or of any person out of reach of. So it is in the possession of such a person who is not in the reach of the court or the parties, or not subject to the process of the court in that case, or of any person legally bound to produce it. When after the notice mentioned in section 66, such person does not produce it, then when the existence, condition or contents of the original have been proved to be admitted in writing by the person against whom it is proved or by his representative in interest. So that person did not come before the court even after he was provided with a notice that is mentioned in section 66, but he actually conveyed the existence, conditions or contents of the original that needs to be proved either by himself or by his representative in interest. Or when the original has been destroyed or lost or when the party offering evidence of its contents cannot for any other reason not arising from his own default or neglect produced it in reasonable time. So either the document got destroyed or it got lost, or whoever is trying to give such evidence, it is not even in the power of that person, or it is not his own default or neglect for which the document got destroyed or lost, that it cannot be otherwise obtained. So in that cases, or if it is not possible to produce it in reasonable time. Clause D says when the original is of such a nature as not to be easily movable. Say for example, the document or the material that the primary evidence needs to be given of is of such a nature that it is not easily movable. In that case, we can also give secondary evidence of it. When the original is a public document within the meaning of section 74. Now when we move to section 74 and 75, we will understand what public document and private documents are. Let's for now understand that if the original is a public document within the meaning of section 74, of which primary evidence cannot be given, then also we can give secondary evidence of it. Also, when the original is a document of which a certified copy is permitted by this act. So this act actually permits the certified copies of certain evidences. So in that cases also, as we know certified copies are secondary evidence, we can give secondary evidence of that particular documents or materials. When the originals consists of numerous accounts or other documents which cannot conveniently be examined in court, and the fact to be proved is the general result of the whole collection. So it is a series of something, and the whole collection is the basic concern of the court. So the court does not need to get into the details, it just needs the overall result of it. In that case, if it cannot be conveniently examined by the court, or if the original consists of numerous accounts, then also secondary evidence can be given for that. So in cases A, C and D, any secondary evidence of the contents of the document is admissible. In case B, the written admission is admissible. So in case B, we need to give written admission. In case E or F, a certified copy of the document but no other kind of secondary evidence is admissible. Only the certified copies will be admissible. In case G, evidence may be given as to the general result of the documents by any person who has examined them. So the secondary evidence will be given by a person who has examined them and who is skilled in the examination of such documents. Section 65A says special provisions as to evidence relating to electronic record. So the contents of electronic records may be proved in accordance with the provisions of section 65B. That is declared here. Now what is section 65B? It talks about admissibility of electronic records. Now this is a complex section. We need to understand it in a very general sense. It says in subsection 1, any information printed on paper, stored, recorded or copied in optical or magnetic media produced by a computer and contained in a electronic record shall be a computer output and shall be deemed to be a document and shall be admissible in court if the following things are fulfilled that are mentioned in subsection 2. Even without the involvement of the original. So if any information is printed on any paper, or if such information is stored or recorded or copied in any optical or magnetic media format that was produced by a computer, or if it is contained in an electronic format, then that will be a computer output, that will be regarded as a computer output, and it shall be deemed to be a document. That means a documentary evidence, and it shall be admissible in the court if the following things are fulfilled that are mentioned here in subsection 2, even without the further proof or production of the original. Now let's read subsection 2 to understand what are the criteria that needs to be fulfilled so that such electronic record or computer output may be admissible in a court. Firstly, if it was produced by a computer during the period over which the computer was used regularly to store or process information for purposes of activities regularly carried on over a period when such person had lawful control over the use of such computer. So, if the computer was used on a regular basis to store or process information, or if it was used for the purposes of activities that are regularly carried out over a period of time, and during such period of time such person had the lawful control over the use of such computer, then in that case that will be admissible as per subsection 1. Also, during the said period, information of such kind contained in electronic record where such information was derived was regularly fed into the computer in the ordinary course of the said activities. So, such information that was stored in that computer was fed into that computer on a regular basis and in the ordinary course of the said activities. So, in that case, or throughout the material part of the said period, the computer was operating properly. If not, then in respect of any period in which it was not operating properly or out of operation did not affect the accuracy of the contents. So also that computer needs to be in operation for the material part of the said period. So it should be operating throughout that material part of the said period, and it should be working or operating properly. If it was not so doing, then such inoperation must not affect the accuracy of the contents. So that inoperation must not be of such an extent that it would affect the accuracy of the contents that are to be admissible in a court of law according to subsection 1. Also, information contained in electronic record reproduces or is derived from such information as fed into the computer in ordinary course of the said activities. So the information that are contained in the electronic record, if they are reproduced or they are derived from such information, then such informations need to be fed into the computer in ordinary course of the said activities. So if all these criteria are fulfilled, then only such kind of information can be admissible in a court of law as per subsection 1. So subsection 2 basically forms the guidelines of the criterias that needs to be fulfilled so that such information can be admissible as per subsection 1. Now subsection 3 says, where over any period the function of storing or processing information for the purposes of any activities regularly carried over that period was performed by a combination of computers operating over that period, or by different computers operating in succession over that period, by different combination of computers operating in succession over that period, or in any other successive manner of operation by one or more combination of computers. So we all know that computers may be combinedly operating or they may be singularly operating. These are the possibilities. Now subsection 3 covers that possibility that if such kind of operations were done by that computer, whether in a combination of computers or by different computers operating in succession over that period, or if there were different combination of computers operating in succession over that period, or in any other successive manner, then in those cases subsection 3 says all such computer will be treated as one single computer. Now in all these above mentioned cases, a certificate to be signed by a person occupying a responsible official position for managing operations of relevant devices or activities shall be evidence of matters stated in the certificate for the following things. So there is generally a person who is responsible for such official position for managing the operation of relevant devices or its activities, and he issues a certificate that is to be signed by him, and that shall be the evidence of matters stated in that certificate for the following things. What are the following things? They are identifying the electronic record containing the statement and describing the manner in which it was produced. So to identify the electronic record containing the statement and to describe the manner in which it was produced, this person needs to give a certificate about it. Also he gives such certificate to give the particular of any device involved in production of that electronic record for purpose of showing its production from a computer. So whether that electronic record was produced from such computer or not, that will also be shown in that certificate. Also, the dealing with any matter relating to subsection 2, that will also be shown in that certificate. Now it further says that information shall be supplied to a computer in an appropriate form directly or with human intervention by appropriate equipment. So either such computer was fed with such information in an appropriate form, which was kind of a direct format, or it was fed into that computer by human intervention by appropriate equipments, or it was in course of official activity that the information was supplied with a view for being stored or processed for purpose of activities by a computer operated otherwise than that course of activity. So anyhow that information was supplied with a view for storing it or processing it, and if that information is duly supplied to that computer, shall be taken to be supplied to it in the course of these activities. So it will be thought that it was supplied to it in the course of the activities. Computer output deemed to be produced by a computer whether directly or with human intervention by means of appropriate equipment will be thought to be sufficient. Now this section has a number of points to remember, so we will make a formula for quick understanding. So subsection 1 says information shall be called computer output, which will deem to be document. Now the information shall be in an electronic record, printed on paper, stored, recorded, copied in optical or magnetic media. That is what subsection 1 talks about. Subsection 2 says document shall be admissible without further proof that satisfies the conditions. What are the conditions? The computer was used regularly and under control of a lawful custodian, or the information was regularly fed on the computer, or the computer was operating properly, or the information fed in ordinary course of said activities. So all these conditions needs to be fulfilled. That is what subsection 2 says. Subsection 3 says such activities were performed by combination of computers, different computers operating in succession, different combination of computers operating in succession, or other manner that are successive operations. All these above mentioned computers will be treated as a singular computer for the purposes of this section. That is what subsection 3 says. Now subsection 4 says documents such as mentioned above is admissible in court after the passing of a certificate. Now what will be the contents of that certificate? It will identify the electronic record, it will describe the manner of production, it will give the particulars of device showing that electronic record was produced by computers, and the details that are mentioned in subsection 2. Such certificate shall be signed by the occupant of responsible official position in relation to the operation of the relevant device. Then only it shall be considered as a evidence for the matter stated in the certificate. So that is what subsection 4 says. Subsection 5 says information supplied to a computer shall be in an appropriate mode with or without human intervention. Information supplied to computer in course of activity for supplying official information with view to store or process for the purpose of those activities. If supply improper, then without course of activity it will still be deemed as course of activity, and any computer output produced directly or by appropriate equipment will be deemed as computer output. And the explanation talks about other information means, which are informations derived by calculation, comparison and other processes. So that is the entire section 65B in a simplified format. Let's move on to section 66 that talks about rules as to notice to produce. It says secondary evidence not to be given unless notice to produce the original is given to the party holding it or his attorney. So section 66 provides the guidelines that wherever secondary evidence is to be given, it shall be given only after giving notice to produce the original, and that notice shall be given to the party holding it or his attorney. So the party or his attorney who is holding the original shall be given a notice that you have to produce it. If you do not produce it, then I am going to produce the secondary evidence of it. So that is the procedure laid down by section 66. But there are certain cases where such notice is not mandatory to be given. Notice shall be in a format prescribed by law, and where no such notice is prescribed, then as per the court considers. So if there is no format prescribed, then whatever the court considers, that will be the format. Now such notice is not mandatory in the following cases. What are they? When the document to be proved is itself a notice, in that case a separate notice is not mandatory. When the adverse party knows from the nature of the case that he will be required to produce it, in that case also notice is not needed to be given. When adverse party has obtained possession of original by fraud or force, in that case also no notice shall be needed. Where adverse party or his agent has the original in the court, so in that case also no notice needs to be given. Where adverse party or his agent admitted loss of document, in that case also there is no need to give notice. Where the person in whose possession the document is out of reach or not the subject of the process of the court, so in that case also no notice needs to be given. Now section 67 says, where a document is said to be signed ought to have been written wholly or in part by any person, then it has to be proved by that person who has wrote or signed it and nobody else. So whenever a particular document has been written wholly or partly by any person, then he will be the only competent person to prove such document and nobody else. So that is what section 67 says. Section 67A says, except in cases of secure electronic signatures, if electronic signature of any subscriber is alleged to be affixed to an electronic record, then that fact that the electronic signature belongs to such subscriber, as to say that signature is the signature of that subscriber, must be proved. So whether such subscriber has actually signed it, whether such signature is the signature of the subscriber or not, that needs to be proved first in cases of electronic signatures. That is what section 67A talks about. Now let's move on to section 68, which says, documents that require by law to be attested shall not be accepted as evidence unless the execution of such document is proved. So whenever a document requires by law to be attested, then it shall not be accepted as evidence unless the execution of such document is proved. Now to prove execution, at least one attesting witness should be called for such proof, and such shall be done only if he is alive or under the process of court, or if he is capable of giving evidence. So if all these criteria are fulfilled, then only such person will be called for proving the execution. That is what section 68 says. We must also understand this, that no such procedure will be followed for any registered document which is not a will, and unless the person who executed such document specifically denied its execution. So that we need to keep in our mind. Now section 69 says, where no attesting witness is found, then two things need to be proved. What are they? Firstly, it needs to be proved that the executing person's signature is in his own handwriting, and at least one of the attesting witnesses have attested such document in his own handwriting. Now section 69 is not available when attesting witness is alive. Section 70 talks about admission of execution by party to attested document. It says, the admission of a party to an attested document of its execution by himself shall be sufficient proof of its execution as against him, though it be a document required by law to be attested. So it may be a document that is by law required to be attested, but if the admission of a party to an attested document is such that he admits that the execution of such document was done by himself, and if he says so, that will be a sufficient proof of the execution of such document as against him. So in that case, the necessity to call an attesting witness is dispensed. Section 71 says, proof when attesting witnesses denies the execution. So whenever the attesting witness denies or forgets the execution, then it may be proved by other evidences that are mentioned in section 69 or 70. Now section 72 says, proof of document not required by law to be attested. So when an attested document does not required by law to be attested, it may be proved as if it was unattested. Now, section 73 says comparison of signature, writing, or seal with others admitted or proved. It says to prove a signature, writing, or seal that it was done by person by whom it is said to be done, then the same shall be compared with the admitted ones, and the court may also take specimen for the same purpose. Now, this provision will apply to pending cases before the court only. Now, section 73A talks about proof as to verification of digital signature. So, to prove the verification of a digital signature certificate needs to be produced, and any other person can apply the public key that is listed in such certificate affixed by that person for that purpose. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.